Hello, BookTube. All right, we're back down in puppy territory because we're getting slowly, very slowly, to the end of this first Fireplace bookcase. We did the main books on the last shelf yesterday, and today we're going to do the books that I have stacked, double stacked outside for the next shelf. So we won't be doing the main books today. We'll get to these, just a handful. It won't be as long as yesterday. The first one is a tiny little thing. I imagine it would be a collector's item if it were in better shape, but it's not. This is Aquaman, Scourge of the Scourge of the Seas, and this is the old style Aquaman. This is not. He's not much of a scourge in this book. It's a tiny little thing, and he's not much of a scourge in here. He mostly gets captured and is utterly helpless without his wife. It's got color illustrations all throughout. There are Aquaman and Mera and Aqualad and Topo the Squid approaching the lair of the villains. I guess that is Aquaman threatening Aqualad. I don't really know. You won't see books like this anymore because finally Aquaman has had a revamp. It was happening for years in DC Comics, which publishes his adventures. It was happening for years that he was slowly but surely, mainly thanks to the writer Jeff Johns, being upgraded as a character, both in terms of seriousness and in terms of power levels. That was happening gradually. And that took off. Readers brought him back from the dead by demand, enthusiastically embraced the old style look, the gold chainmail, two hands instead of one hand and a hook. Mostly readers embraced clean shaven, but I guess DC's not going to do that. And then they had a $1 billion movie. And then Aquaman as a movie was a joke for years on the TV show Entourage. And it accurately reflected the way that people thought about the character. But that has all changed. That has all changed. The Hollywood people for DC Studios have settled the hash on that question once and for all, because now Aquaman is a $1 billion franchise, and that means that even in the comic books, which don't necessarily reflect the movies, he is now taken seriously. His powers have been upgraded, and he's no longer just a two-fisted crime fighter who happens to live in the ocean. So this kind of a book is a curiosity now in many ways. Oh, fantastic. Okay, this is John Maddox Roberts. This is the first book in his SPQR series that went on for a long time. Very frustrating to an American reader because the first 3 or 4 books of this series were brought out in mass markets. They're ancient Rome historical mysteries, and they're really good. And then I guess he lost his American publisher. So I would be working in a bookstore and I would be wishing there were more SPQR stories, and I would hear from customers from overseas that there are. They were ongoing. They're very frustrating. And so I haven't. I think he went on to get either an American distributor or an American publisher. Total patchwork as far as mystery writing goes. And as a result, there are large numbers of this series that I have not read. But this first one, this deals with a young member of the Roman aristocracy who likes to snoop. He likes to solve crimes, and who is the neat narrative twist is that he's writing all of these murder mysteries from the old age, when everything has changed. He's writing these murder mysteries during the Old Republic, what turns out to be the last years of the Old Republic. So he knows all these people. Catiline and Cicero, and especially Julius Caesar. He knows them for the ordinary people that they are, and hates the fact that Augustus now rules the empire. Hates that. So in addition to really well-crafted murder mysteries, you also get great social commentary in these things, which you wouldn't think. They look sort of throwaway. They're not helped at all by the cover design. But this is from 1990. God, how long ago was this? Yeah, 1990. So that's a long time, but it still holds up. They're wonderful. If you see them and you like Roman historical mysteries, I strongly advise them. Look at this. Okay, I think we've seen this before. I think we saw it in the little book room. This is the Sketchbook of Washington Irving. I don't know if you can make it out. It's got faded gold leaf letters beautiful cover design. It's just a cute little book of the sketchbook of Washington Irving. I believe it's also illustrated. No, this one is not illustrated, but it's just lovely. Look at that. And I of course, am a big fan of Washington Irving. I know everything there is to know about him, and I miss the fact that I dislike the fact that he's not known anymore, except for, 2 stories that he wrote. He's not the rest, most of the rest of his stuff is out of print. Okay, all right. Oh well. Okay, this sort of gives the game away. This is literary essays by the great Mary McCarthy. This does not belong out here. This belongs in the little book room with the other literary essays. Mary McCarthy's fantastic. She's incredible. And this Penguin paperback has a bookmark in it for her new book, Birds of America. So it's sort of dating myself there. So I need to set this aside because this does not belong out here. Okay. All right. This next one is a mass market of poetry. You won't see that anymore. This is by Kenneth Koch. This is The Art of Love. And it is wonderful. Just wonderful. It is. It is just wonderful. It is a faux analytical breakdown of what love means, that much in the nature of the famous poem by Ovid that it tips its hat to, and I love it. I absolutely love it. It does not belong out here. Oh, okay, all right, boy. This doesn't belong out here either. This is another literary book, another book about authors. This is More English Books of Power by George Hamlin Fitch, who did a great and heartbreaking book called Comfort Found in Old Books that he wrote when his son died. And he retreated, as a lot of us do, into books and wrote essays about some of the great pillars of the Western canon. And this is more of the same. This is him writing about that book took off. That book was a hit. People loved how handy it was, they loved how knowledgeable it was, and they loved how heartfelt it was. So this has Sir Walter Scott, Thomas Carlyle, Macaulay, Charles Lamb, Dickens, Thackeray. Okay. Charlotte Bronte, George Eliot. Great. Boy, I should reread these. I don't think you're ever going to see this or his other book again. I don't think they're going to come back. So, wow, okay, that's wonderful. Oh, all right, great. All right, these are Robert Graves, his books I, Claudius and Claudius the God. These are the white mass market paperbacks with the tile cover art that went hand in hand with the great BBC production of I, Claudius, which you should by all means see. you should see it multiple times. You should know it. You should know I, Claudius. What I wouldn't give for it to be on Netflix, so it's available to the whole world. If you've heard about it and you've heard that it's great, you've heard correct. It's every bit as great as you've heard it is. These books, they are not uniformly great. They have long, especially Claudius the God, has long digressions that were of interest to Graves, but to no one else alive. I, Claudius is a much more successful, at least in holding the reader's attention, novel than Claudius the God. But the reason I was pleased to see these here on the shelf is because for a long time I didn't have them. It used to be that you couldn't have a book collection without having these two books, and most of the bookish people that I knew made sure to spend $6, $7 on each of these just to have them on the shelf, not to read them. And then, I give them away. I give books away all the time, so I got rid of these. And then the other day, I realized, oh my God, I don't have them, and I don't want them in trade paperback or even in hardcover. These are the classic iterations of these two books, of these white mass market paperbacks. So I'm glad to have them again. I reinforce them, and I will not be getting rid of them. No, okay. All right. This is the Superman story. There is Clark Kent seeing an emergency and running into something that your grandparents called a phone booth. It used to be that there were public phones on the sidewalks. They were in booths, so you had privacy, of course, and you would go into the booth and you would use a coin to make a phone call. I know that's going to seem like weirdness to all of you, and for some reason, the gimmick took off that Clark Kent would change into Superman in a phone booth. I guess because it was the nearest place that had privacy. Once upon a time, a phone booth was a fully enclosed place where you couldn't be seen from outside it. Think of Doctor Who's call box. Once upon a time, phone booths were like that. Then they changed to being transparent at the top, and then they changed to just being a stand with a phone on it, with no privacy whatsoever. But for a long time, they were a private place, and I guess that's what some writer thought. Well, it looks like a changing room, but that always presented me with problems from the very beginning. Even when I first saw it decades and decades ago, I thought, A, haven't you established this character can travel faster than the speed of light? Why doesn't he change into Superman in his Fortress of Solitude at the Arctic and then come back? He won't lose any time at all. So why doesn't he do that? Or if he can move at faster than the speed of light and all of his clothes, not just his Superman costume, but his Clark Kent suits are indestructible, then why not just change right where you are? No one can see it happen. And also, you got somebody who's 6'4", hurriedly changing clothes in a wooden phone booth. Somebody who can juggle planets, isn't he going to tear it to pieces? Wouldn't that increase the amount of time necessary to change into his costume? To be so delicate that you don't blast the phone booth apart? But anyway, this is a reprint of Action Comics number 500, which was a big exercise special edition of the comic that had it was drawn by Kurt Swan, it was written by Elliot Maggin, and it told the story of Superman, his extended origin story. It sort of brought together all of the accretions and additions that had been made over the last 50 years, and this told his story. And of course, because it was a comic of its time, I think it came out in 1970 or something like that, it also had a plot to it. It wasn't just the story of Superman's origin. There was a fiendish plot by Lex Luthor. But I loved this version of the Superman origin story. I consider it canon. I consider that this should be the version that we go by, where Superman comes to Earth as a baby, puts on a costume as Superboy, learns his powers and civic responsibility from his parents, the Kents. They both die. He goes to Metropolis and starts to fight crime. That is to my mind, the perfect iteration of the Superman story. And the only reason I stress it is because it's under fire right now from an ongoing comic from DC called Superman Year One that is radically changing that story in every conceivable way, and does not have Steve's seal of approval. Plus, there's a wonderful moment when Superman's dog, Krypto, comes to Earth. Superboy's dog comes to Earth. He'd been sent from Krypton, and Superman is explaining. He's guiding a tour through a Superman museum, and he explains there were things that I shared with Krypto, things I desperately needed to share, or the pain of being alone would have been too great. Ma and Pa, my friends, wouldn't have understood. It's difficult to explain. They are little things that may not seem important to you. Things like the feeling of the wind in your face in a way no one else in the world can feel it, or the sound bullets make when they bounce off living flesh. And there he has Superboy just cavorting in the air with his dog. How wonderful. We'd never seen a panel like that before. And it didn't matter that we couldn't talk, at least not the way other people do, because we could communicate in our own special way, through the shared experiences that were ours alone. He was a dog, only a dog, but in some ways he was a closer friend to me than any person on Earth. And needless to say, love that part. I love the whole thing. I was so happy when it was brought out as a little book, because my copy of Action Comics 500 is gone, long gone. I read it until it fell apart. So it is powder now. Okay, all right. This is another classic mass market printing that I wish I had them all. I only have, I think, a couple. This is the Judge Dee mysteries by Robert Van Gulik. This is the Chinese gold murders, and they all look like this. They're slightly square. I don't know if you can tell. If you line them up at the bottom there, these are they're more like a square than a rectangle like normal mass markets. And I once had them all. They had to be imported, and I love them. These are fantastic murder mysteries. I think I only have a couple. I wish I had them all in this format. I wish I'd saved them, but I give them away when people say I want a really interesting historical murder mystery that's not normal. That's not the normal historical murder mystery. I say, oh, well, have you ever read Judge Dee? Usually the answer is no, and then I get the pleasure of introducing him to people. I have to keep an eye out for these when I see them in the dwindling supplies of mass market paperbacks in used bookstores. Okay, all right. Talk about a classic. It's Meg. This is one of the many new covers that Meg by Steve Alton has had. This one shows the megalodon chomping on a Tyrannosaurus Rex who is panicking in the water there, and that scene actually happens at the beginning of this book. That's how we are introduced to the megalodon, is that it attacks a T-Rex that is wading in shallow water. And easily kills it, of course, because the megalodon is much bigger and much savager. And in the course of this book, this ridiculous, silly, wonderful book, circumstances conspire to bring a megalodon to the surface of the 20th century ocean, where it feasts on whales and then on innumerable people. Because it turns out that a population of megalodons have been living in the Marianas Trench the whole time. There's none of it that makes any sense, but I fell in love with it the minute I read it, and I have read it countless times since then. This came out in 2005, and I just talk about classic cheese. Oh my. Okay, all right. Isn't this lovely? And it's inscribed in 1912. Oh my, Merry Christmas, Philadelphia, 1912. Oh no, 1902, sorry. 1902. Oh my, okay. This is the same printer that did the sketchbook. This is The Lady of the Lake by Sir Walter Scott. Also with the gold inlay, and also with the very pretty frontispiece there. I think this one probably doesn't have illustrations either. No, this is just The Lady of the Lake and Other Poems by Sir Walter Scott, whose fad as a poet is over forever. So I may be his only loving reader left. Okay, this is Susan Shillinglaw. This is on reading The Grapes of Wrath. Went into it skeptically, of course, because at the time I had not reread Grapes of Wrath in a long time and wasn't a big fan of it. Thought it was pretty badly maudlin, pretty badly overwritten. And regardless of what you think of The Grapes of Wrath, whether that is true for you or not, this is a fantastic book. Just a fantastic exaltation of the reading experience. I would gladly pay actual money to read this author read other classics of American literature. Gladly I would do that. But I'll take the one. This impressed the daylights out of me. All right. This is an extra-sized, one of those prestige-sized paperbacks of Dune. Look at that. You can't make it out in this bad lighting, but that's two people walking on a dune. They're casting a long shadow on there. You can see their footprints on the sand. And this is, Dune has had many, many reprintings. Here's another one there. Always in these prestige-sized paperbacks, but this one I thought was so understated and so lovely that I got it. So it's one of the many Dune editions that I have, and that becomes extra important because starting in July, we're doing Dune Tube. Me and a group of other great booktubers are doing Dune Tube. Starting in July, we'll be reading all of Frank Herbert's Dune novels. We'll do Dune in July, and then Dune Messiah in August, and go on from there. Only Frank Herbert's Dune books, not the very weak, very tepid knockoff books by his son. Instead, we'll just be doing the real Dune books. And we start out with Dune. And I think the consensus among my fellow Dune tubers, the plan for Dune Tube is that we're all going to do a video about Dune in the third week of the month, I think, something around the 20th or the 21st. And I think I have been given permission by my fellow Dune tubers to do more than that, because of course I don't want to talk about Dune for just one video. So I think that I'll make a separate announcement video for this, but I think both for Dune and for Thomas Covenant, I will do multiple videos per book. I don't expect, other booktubers have lives and responsibilities and friends and children and all sorts of things like that I don't have. So they don't have the freedom to hunker down and make many videos on one book, but I kind of do. I'm a lonely old shut-in. If I didn't talk to my imaginary booktube friends, I don't know what I'd do. And really, Dune needs more than one video. So I think in both cases, I will probably be doing that, something like that. Probably one video a week. I'll announce it, and we'll break it all down and do it just as a normal read-along. Okay, all right. Remember a couple of bookshelves ago, I was showing you mass market paperbacks of classics. And I showed you, I think there was, what was it? The Magnum Easy Eye edition of Tom Sawyer. Remember, I groused because they have Samuel Clemens as the author of Tom Sawyer. And I mentioned at the time that I had a Magnum Easy Eye of Dracula somewhere. And here it is. This also has, just like the Oxford World Classics, this also has Bela Lugosi on the cover. No idea who Carrie Holton is. She wrote her name on the cover. I don't know why anybody would do that. But I knew that I used to love these old Magnum Easy Eye editions, so I had to grab this one. I don't need another edition of Dracula. I don't need more than one edition of Dracula, but I have plenty. Okay, I also, on a previous tour, we were looking at mass market paperbacks, and we saw a bunch of murder mysteries by Georgette Heyer, the famous romance author, and this is another one of those. Behold, Here's Poison. That should go, actually let me put it up here, it should go with those others. It doesn't belong by itself, it belongs with the other Georgette Heyer, and there's more Georgette Heyer somewhere. I have now 4 or 5, 6 or 7 of her murder mysteries that are just scattered, and that these library tours really help with that, because they force me to see where things are and where they should be. Invaluable. And then the last book. Okay, the last book is something we've seen already. We saw it just recently. This is a much reinforced and yet falling apart mass market paperback of Superman, the Last Son of Krypton, which I found the other day in a hardcover with a dust jacket. I did not know that it even existed. See, this came out this was everywhere in bookstores and drugstore spinner racks, and has the inset of black and white photos from the movie. There is the great helicopter rescue scene. You've got me. Who's got you? This was in all of the bookstores. This was in all of the drugstores. This was the book manifestation of the studio's publicity push for Superman, the movie, the motion picture. And as a result, I knew about this, and I've had a copy of this many, many times. I've read it many, many times, but I did not know that a hardcover existed. So here we have this. This is probably not the only copy of this paperback that I have here in the place, and that's it. These are the transverse books for this next bookshelf in this endless library tour. So the next thing we will do will be the main books on the shelf itself, and I don't know that. I think we can probably wait until Monday to do that, right? Aren't these endless library tours wearing you down every day? Another library tour? Shouldn't we wait and give it a little bit of a break? Just let me know one way or another. But the next thing we do will be just another row of painfully miscellaneous books. So prepare yourself. Thank you, BookTube.